Have you ever experienced something so crippling in your life that has made you feel broken? I have. Are you someone who has a giving heart but is struggling to feel good themselves? Are you consistently putting your needs aside to take care of everyone else? If so, you're not alone. Giving starts with giving to yourself so that you are able to give of yourself to other people. Isn't it time you took back control and discovered what makes you tick? Join me in my journey and find out how you can feel better about yourself, live your best life, and share that with others. Thinking of yourself, it doesn't make you selfish, it makes you brave. I'm Nelia, and this is the Giving Starts With You podcast. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Giving Starts With You podcast. We have a return guest today. I just want to get right in there because, again, Gina is amazing, and I'm so happy to welcome her back on the show. If you didn't catch her episode, it's episode 87, where we talk all about Kaizen-Muse, and we talk about, we get into the nitty-gritty with anxiety and some other things that I think will really help you guys. So if you haven't heard that one, please go back and check it out. You won't regret it. Welcome, Gina, again to the show. So great to have you. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so happy to be back again. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime, I'd love to have you on. So today we're going to speak about one of my most favorite things in the world, travel and creativity. So this is going to be a cool conversation. So I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of a background on Gina in case you haven't been introduced with her on the previous podcast. So Gina's an artist. She's a writer. She's a certified Kaizen-Muse Creativity Coach who believes everyone, even the most logical people, can be creative with just some few small tweaks. And I love that because sometimes it's hard to free ourselves depending on our personality, right? So I love that. Kaizen-Muse, for those of you who don't know, uses small steps, mindfulness, and intuition to gradually build creative momentum without overwhelm. Gina is the founder of Gina Clark Creative, an online community that provides creative resources and coaching for people looking to ignite their creativity. She also especially loves to help her fellow left brain creatives and analytical artists who believe that embracing your creativity is the ultimate act of self-care. Gina lives in Kenora, Ontario, fellow Canuck, with her husband, 3 children, 2 cats, and a very active mini Australian shepherd. So yeah, let's talk about, feeling blocked and struggling to find time to be creative, and how travel, how that plays a part in it. I'm dying for this conversation.
Sure. So, we talked about this a little bit in the last episode, but everyone, I don't even love the word blocked, but we all get to points where things feel a little stale, or we don't know how to move forward, or we've kind of lost that joy in making. And that happens to everyone. It's not just people who are hobbyists or do it on the side. It happens to professional artists. And of course, it happens to people who want to be creative, but they don't know how, and they don't know how to push themselves into that arena. So one of the simplest ways to get those creative juices and that energy flowing again, I think, is a change of scenery. And what better way than to travel? You can certainly do all kinds of other things. You can, go outside for a walk and get a change of scenery that way, or, just change up your routine, or, do some work with your non-dominant hand just to see what happens. That can do it too. But I don't think there's anything that is quite as impactful as travel. It just, for me, it just lights me up when I go somewhere new. I absolutely love it.
Same with me. It's just, and it has nothing to do with where you're going.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have anything to do with how long you're there and what you're doing. It's just a change, right? It's like it
Yeah.
opens your mind to so many new things. That's how I
Mhm.
feel as well. I've been fortunate enough to have traveled a little bit more in the last few years before COVID. But growing up, I didn't get a chance to visit a lot of places, and I'm so glad that I can now. And it just reignites everything. Life can become boring, right? You get up, you do the same things, and you don't think, like, I don't know about you in the beginning, but for me, years ago, I knew it was missing something, but I never said to myself, oh, I'm going to go and take half an hour or an hour to go and do something creative. Like it just never occurred to me. And then when I started doing new things, like I started doing stained glass, and I just started, and I'm not good at any of these things, but you don't have to be, right?
No,
Um,
not at all.
yeah, and I'm like, I need this, and people say I'm a creative person. I don't feel that I am, but I guess I am because I like music and all this other stuff. But it's more just putting it into your daily routine, like for those listeners that are listening and they're like, yeah, I'm not a creative person. I don't know. The feeling is like, you're gonna get the feeling anyway, whether what you're doing is the product is good. It's not about the product, right? It's about the actually, yeah, doing it. So I love that travel, like, because I didn't think of that before. So I love that you're bringing that to light, that travel is an amazing way to get started with that too.
Yeah, and just to touch on where you went there, um, it's all about the process. It's not about the product at all. If you're committed to the process and you're committed to just showing up, the product's going to happen. And it's probably going to surprise you, and it might be a lot more wonderful than what you ever could have imagined. Um, and if it's not, that's okay too, because um, we learn through doing. Um, but yeah, travel is just um, it for me. It's so, I'm going to use the word sensual because it sparks all of my senses.
I love.
Like there's new smells, new sights, new sounds, everything. And you're right, it doesn't have to be, some 3 months vacation where you immerse yourself somewhere. It can be a different town down the road. It could be as small as that, if that's all you can do. um, it's just changing up that scenery. And I love traveling through Canada. And I don't live in a city for a reason. I prefer I prefer somewhere quieter, but I love visiting cities. I love visiting cities for vacation because there's so much going on and there's so much you can drink in. And I've just had amazing trips to Vancouver and Toronto, and I don't want to live there necessarily, um, but yeah, you come away with such a renewed sense of of life.
An
Like I think
exploration.
creativity, yeah, creativity is like it's a core essence of our being. And when you were talking about, even if you don't think you're creative, we're all creative. People don't talk about, like what do people say when they're like, I can't wait to retire and do that. They never say, I can't wait to sit in front of the computer and look at spreadsheets, or right? It's some sort of creative hobby, or it's traveling. Those are the two big ones. People talk about wanting to garden more. They look forward to cooking more. They look forward to getting back to making music or doing things that they used to do when they were younger. And it's usually something very creative. So I think the two absolutely go hand in hand.
Oh yes, I love that so much. And it's, you open yourself up to the unexpected. So it's not planned. And I love that part. Like I tend to plan somewhat when I travel. And my husband's always like, well, don't plan too much because I'm a bit of an organizer. And the more I let go with the travel, the more I experience, right? And one of my favorite things is to just watch different cultures and to open myself up and just put away all my preconceived notions and thoughts. And that's what creativity is, right? Allowing yourself to be open because it might surprise you. You know, sometimes we I think we're in a bubble and we think creativity, we think of like drawing all the time, or we think of
Mhm.
like the most common things, but it doesn't have to be like that. Like you mentioned cooking, like just to like I would love to be able to go. There's this chalet in Italy that has
Mhm.
a week long Italian cooking course. And then at night you tour and you do like a wine tour and stuff. And then you listen to some local music and but just to go there and just experience the atmosphere around us, even if we're not good chefs and we don't follow the recipe, you know, I
Yeah.
could see it being such a great experience. And it's all about the feeling that comes with the art, not what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I think that sounds lovely.
Oh, it's so
That
expensive, but
sounds
it's on
beautiful.
my list.
Yeah. I
One
bet.
day. It's this beautiful castle and it's just like gorgeous. But
Yeah.
you know, I don't know if you know, but I've created a discover your purpose handbook. So part of that is I have people list all of the things they enjoy doing, but associating it with a feeling, because that for me is the creative part. So like I enjoy singing, but why, what is it about singing that I like? You know, or if somebody's thinking, well, I'm not creative, but you know, I do enjoy, like you said, gardening. What is it about the like doing it? Is it, you know, you feel free, you're doing your hands, getting into the soil. Like for me, singing, I'm not great at it, but I enjoy it because it makes me feel like free. It makes me feel, you know, all these things that I associate with that creativity, with what I'm doing.
Mhm.
So for travel, like, can you tell us maybe of a place that you went that you had an experience, like your very first, you know, experience that made you feel, hey, this is connected? Like, did you have a moment
Um,
or
well,
just, hmm,
I I'll tell you a bit about myself as well. I'm very organized and like in my regular life, I'm a bit type A. And like you said in the beginning, a little bit, left-brained and logical. Um, but when I travel, I am completely the opposite. I am like a different person. My husband and I joke because we say that we change roles because he's always telling me like just relax and go with the flow. And as soon as I get to the airport, I'm like, I'm on vacation, like whatever's gonna happen, like bring it on. I love it. I want to experience everything. Um, so and I think like my parents, we traveled a lot, but we traveled a lot uh, in the family station wagon, and we did a lot of driving across the country, driving down into the states, and doing trips like that, which was always fun. So I was always very excited to go do that and see different places. But the big ones for me was I was lucky enough when I was younger to take 2 extended trips to Europe, and that was possible because my mom's side of the family is they're all in Belgium by way of Italy. They both sides of my family went to Belgium after World War II to look for work, and my grandparents met there. And so my grandparents, all their brothers and sisters, still live there.
okay,
So we did a trip with my grandparents when I was 12, and we spent 7 weeks there.
nice.
And we went again when I was 16, and we spent 4 weeks. And it was just, it impacted me so much. It was so amazing. Um, I think for me, I had a realization quite young that everyone doesn't live the same way that I do
Mm,
because of that experience. And I mean, it was Western European, so still very similar, but also very different.
mhm.
Um, and it just made me want to know how other people live all over the world. But at the same time, there was always like that connection with, that human connection. Um, because we didn't speak, my grandparents always had to be the translators. Um, we weren't fluent in French or Italian. But we still connected, and we still could sit down at the table together and have a meal and laugh. And it was so amazing. So that's definitely what gave me the bug.
I'm so glad that you experienced that. I think it's so important, and it makes us more grateful too when we can see how other people live. Because let's face it, Canada is one of the richest countries, right? In the States and all the major. And I think, especially at that age, where you need to realize, like, you're growing up and you're just changing. Like my son, for example, we've been to a couple of places that I think has made him more grateful and more. And I wish I had the opportunity when I was younger, because we didn't do a lot of travel growing up. But what we did do was amazing. It just made me feel like the world, like how much more human and the same we are, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm so glad that you had those experiences. Did you have you ever returned as an adult?
Um, I went to Italy for 2 weeks as an adult, but that was almost 20 years ago now. So I
It's
haven't, it's time. It is time. I haven't done as much traveling as I would have liked as an adult. Um, and I'm getting where I want to make it a priority again.
yeah.
Because you get sucked into everyday life.
Mhm.
But so again, like tying that back to creativity, it's the same thing. You get sucked into that routine and just like doing like Groundhog Day and the same thing over and over again. And
And
you know,
so it sucks the life out of you.
yes. So you have to decide what you want to make a priority.
Yeah.
What's important to you.
Your family is sort of around the same age, right? As you were when you went.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe it's a good time to
Yeah.
remember, like, because they'll remember, it'll impact them. And I'm
Yeah.
sure they're very creative and connected with who they are because of you. I can see that would rub off on anybody. But yeah, no, that would be amazing. That would be amazing, even to create like a little retreat, where somebody, and like you said, it could be take a different road. It could be, it doesn't have to be across the world. It doesn't have to be in another country. Just
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. If you're open to exploring, it's amazing what you can find sometimes. That's right. Sometimes you talk about even being a tourist in your own town. We don't do those things because we just don't. Um,
Uh-huh.
but you know, open yourself up to seeing what's around the corner. You might be pleasantly surprised, and it could
Absolutely.
be a real spark for something creative that you're doing.
Yeah, no, I love that. See, another thing, I'm just thinking as we're talking, another thing is I just wrote a book, and for my book launch, people asked me, "Oh, did you always want to be a writer?" And I was like, "I don't think so." But when I went to the Mediterranean, I went a few years ago. I went on a cruise and I started documenting and writing. I felt like, although it wasn't a passion of mine before, that trip, and while I was there, I'm like, I need to, I started feeling more creative, right? And I started just writing in this beautiful journal, and it just really sparked that for me. And that was one of the ways that I was trying to be creative, but it wasn't necessarily something that I felt before I was on that trip. I was just sitting there and I was looking out and I was like, I need to, document this
Mhm.
somehow besides just photos, right?
Yeah,
So
love it.
yeah, no, there's so much.
Well, and part of travel, I think, is that you kind of have that luxury of time to do those things
Mm,
because you don't have the everyday chores or I don't know. I find when I'm in my own house, everything that needs to be done is always staring at you. Um, right. And when you're traveling, that's not there. So I think it opens that door a little bit
mm,
for us to be more open to doing those types of things. Um, I know that I take, you know, 20 times more pictures than I do when I'm here. I've always got my camera out. That's one of my favorite things to do when I'm traveling.
that's creative.
And yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And it's just, I don't know. I think it's just that openness is there. And that's what so travel helps us feel that openness that we need to be able to be creative and create. And that's what we can bring
Totally
back home
agree.
with us. Yeah.
I totally agree. And photography is a great way, because we could go on the same adventure, be side by side on a trip, and the interpretation is what's creative, right? So the
Yeah.
interpretation is completely different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the way each, it's amazing to me because there's billions and billions of people on Earth, and not two people feel the exact same thing at the same time. Like that blows my mind.
Yeah.
Like I have, like in the background, I always have this timer. I don't know if you can see it, but it's to remind me that life is short. And I discovered that a few years ago with my own story. And I keep reminding myself every day to try to do something different. And I don't always do it, but I'm trying to remember and be like mindful of that, you know,
Yeah.
and yeah, drive a different way. Like we talk about this in the other episode, drive a different way to work. Perhaps do something, anything can ignite creativity, anything. But,
Mhm.
even at the airport, just to watch, I try to think of, okay, where are these people coming from? Where are they going? Even like it just starts right there for me. Like, you know,
Yeah. Start telling stories. I love doing that too.
yeah, it's true. And it just like, I mean, we're both smiling here because we know how it feels, right? And it's
Yeah.
not, I don't know. Do you think you would have felt the same if your parents hadn't introduced you to that?
Um, oh, I don't know if that was, I mean,
And you may never know, right? But
yeah, like I said, we did travel,
yeah,
but nothing like that. And in that, like that trip, the first trip that we did, we drove from Belgium down into the lower part of Italy to visit where my grandparents were from, separate towns, but and then back up again. And that was just such an adventure. It was such an adventure. And this was in 1985. So there was no internet booking or, like we just showed up in a place and my parents tried to find hotels or whatever. Um, it was very fly by the seat of your pants. We never really knew what we were doing. We had this really broad
yeah,
schedule, and it was just so fun. It was so fun, and then the stuff we saw was, I like. How do you recreate that? You can't.
no,
And what's funny is all of us remember the trip differently. Like
really.
I was 12 when we took that trip, and my sisters would have been 10 and 8. So they were, kind of at that age, I guess, where you might not remember as much detail maybe as I did. But even when I talk to my mom and dad, they have different memories about different pieces of it. Like there's certain things that just imprint in your own brain. And somebody else picked up something completely different at the same place. So it's just so amazing.
Yes. What connects us, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
I remember my dad always wanting to go to on road trips, and he could never find his destination. Like he was terrible. And even though we'd be sitting there as kids, but oh my God, I need to get out of this car. We still, we were getting to a point where, okay, we're never going to fight. So it was just kind of, we had made peace with the fact that we would get in the car and go for a drive and never really stop anywhere because we could never find where we were going. But we would always bring our Walkmans and we would always bring a book to draw in. And it would be the only time I ever drew was in these long car trips. But
Yeah.
we would be singing and we would be laughing and we would be cursing because we just wanted to go home sometimes because it was,
Mhm.
hours and hours of nothingness. But we always found something to do, those times in the car. So whether it was drawing, playing hangman, like something. So it
Mhm.
does create that. Even if you're trying to resist it, it just happens.
Yeah. Yeah, we did a lot of that too. My dad would always pile us up in the car on a Sunday and we'd just drive to a different town. Just and we hated it as kids, right? Like we're like, oh, what do we have to go? But now I appreciate it so much because exactly we did sing and listen to music and played games, and I saw my province when
Mm,
I was a kid. We drove around and checked out places, and yeah, it was just, it wasn't always very exciting,
yeah,
but it was just, I don't know, it was just a cool experience. I do appreciate it much more now as an adult.
yeah, for sure. For those people who haven't heard your first episode, can you give us like a really short description of what Kaizen-Muse is so they can see how we're tying in the creativity and the artistry and all those things and how it helps us?
Sure. So Kaizen-Muse is creativity coaching. I don't want to call it a technique, but it's definitely a specific way of approaching it. So Kaizen's a Japanese word that, loosely translated means small um, improvement, a continuous improvement through small steps. I have it backwards. Yes. So what the approach is that you take very small, tiny, manageable steps that are likely to result in wins for you, so that you don't trigger your brain's fear response. So, a lot of times when we're trying to make changes in our life, we self-sabotage, or we resist it, or it just seems like too much too fast. And the Kaizen is really about just taking that one next small step and just looking that far into the future. um, and the muses are an invention of the founder, Jill Badonsky. And what she did was she decided it was time to create some modern day muses, instead of the old Greek ones, and bring them up into this century. So the muses are really about channeling different things that you need to be, fulfilled and joyful and happy in your creativity, and make it more fun. So she has different muses like audacity, because we all need a sprinkle of audacity if we're going to be creative. And there's one called lull. So that's about taking that time to rest and restore yourself and reflect, because that's also important. So bringing those two things together when we do sessions, when I work with a client, we try to keep the steps very small. It's meant to be a very safe space, a space where people can explore, and we make sure that we do an experience during a session. So
Hmm.
we're not just talking about things, we're actually doing things. So if, say, a client used to love uh, working with pastels and hasn't done it for 30 years, and they're really nervous about getting back to it. And, we always build things up in our heads to be more scary than maybe they are. Um, I might check in and say, well, how do you feel about pulling them out right now and just taking a look at what you have? And oftentimes that just doing it can break down the barriers that we've made for ourselves. And we go, oh, okay, well, that was okay. So maybe now maybe now I'm going to make a mark on the paper because that was okay. I finally did it. I pulled them out. And we just move along like that. So,
Because we
yeah.
forget, don't we? We forget
Yep.
things that we enjoy. When we're kids, we don't think, oh, we don't analyze it and say, oh, what's going to make me happy right now? Should I do this? No. Should I do this? No. We just
Yeah.
do it,
Yeah.
right? And it's the way that we do it so carefree that makes it enjoyable. And I think
Yeah.
as adults, we completely forget that we need that still in our lives.
Yeah. We need to play too.
Oh, yeah.
We need to play.
And the more
Yeah.
you do it, the more natural it feels. And the
Mhm.
more you do it, the slower I find the time goes in the day. I don't know if you like, I'm always looking for ways to slow down time because the older that I get, the more time just passes me by.
Yeah.
So, whether it's just reading a book, like I find that creative as well.
Mhm.
I put that in my creative zone. But it just feels like the time goes by slower because you're more intentional with what you're doing. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's so healing. Like we talked before about how it heals so many of our struggles and adversities. And I don't know. I almost want to ask the audience like to make a list of everything they think is creative, you know, and think outside of the box because there's so many things we don't normally maybe categorize as being creative, you know.
Mm-hmm.
um, and throw it in like a hat or throw it in a cup or throw it in a bag or something. And then every day, because I used to do this with my son when we were small, when he was little, every day, pull something out and dedicate at least 30 minutes. And then I think if you do that every day for a week or two, you're going to be like, it's going to become not something that you have to remember to put in your schedule. You're going to, I think, cancel other things to make, you know, time for that. So it'll be like, no, this is part of my, you know, self-care and stuff. And you'll find yourself like doing 2 3 hours at a time and having to stop because it just feels so good.
Right. And that's where, I mean, we do something similar. You know, we may have a small step being for a client, pull out your pastels and just play around with them for 5 minutes. And if it feels right to do more, do more. And
Mm.
almost every time, people are going to do more, because usually the hardest part is just getting things out and starting it. It's not continuing. So it's
Yes,
just a
yes.
way to get over that step. But yeah, I love how you talked about basically you're building a creative habit, right?
Mm,
So it just becomes part of your day. But I want to go back to what you said about basic, you know, slowing down time. I think too that that's where creativity and travel have a similarity, is they're both very mindful.
mm.
Because do you not find that, you know, time is slower when you're traveling too, because you're taking everything in the moment. And that's what happens when you're creating too. You're not thinking about the past or the future. You're thinking about exactly what you're doing, what's in front of you, and what you're going to do next. And that's the same thing when you're traveling.
Mm.
I mean, I find it, if
Yeah,
you let it be like that, yeah.
yeah. I've experienced both things. So I've experienced if it's solely a vacation,
Mhm.
because I'm not necessarily like you know go to resort beach person, but I've done that. But it's not my favorite way to travel, but it's still very enjoyable. But I find that when I get back, I was like, wow, that went quick. But then the vacations that are not based around only that, for example, maybe I'm in, you know, going more into the culture and or doing volunteer work while I'm there, or things that are less planned. I find it's slower. You
Mhm.
know, like the last
Yeah.
trip we went 10 days and I felt like I was there for 3 weeks because I enjoyed every second. Whereas there's trips that I go on for 2 weeks and I'm like, wow, I felt like I just slept. Like, you know, I think it's what you,
Yeah.
I don't know, the purpose maybe and your mindset too, like it plays a part. But I think I think you're right. Like the hardest part is starting, but it's also remembering because sometimes we feel like life is so
Yeah.
chaotic. You know, like I
Yeah.
know if I'm struggling with something, the last thing I do is think about, oh, I need to make time to do this. It's just I'm so in my head and things are going crazy and I'm anxious and all these things. That's the last thing I think about. So if we can have a reminder somehow that, hey, let's just do this anyways. Like you said, 5 minutes, that's great. You know, just to remember, set an alarm. Like I know it sounds cheesy, but honestly, it works. Set an
Mhm.
alarm or just write something down in a room that you know you kind of tend to visit when you want to be alone and you're in chaos and just have
Yeah.
a piece of paper or something that kind of like yeah, okay, let's try this right now. This might do me some good, you know.
Yeah. Well, and that's where, I mean, working with a coach can be so helpful, because I know I found when I was working with a coach, um, I did so much more, because that person's there to help you with those reminders, and
Mhm.
it's also a little bit of accountability. But one thing I'm going to be starting, which I haven't quite got up and running yet, is something called it's going to be like a creative study hall. So
Oh,
basically, it's going to be about an hour long, and you would just log in to Zoom, and you work on your stuff, and I work on my stuff, and
love
there's
that
a
so
group of
much.
us working together, and it is. I've done this, and it is amazing how much more you get done. There's something about that that just focuses you, um, and you just do the work. You're not, looking around and, oh, an email came in, or
Yeah.
oh, I think the bathroom needs to be cleaned, so I better go do that now. It's just amazing, and it's just like you're not talking to each other, but you're just there, like holding the space and supporting each other. So that's something that I'm going to be setting up soon. I'm hoping to do that weekly. So,
That would
and
be
that would
incredible.
be something free.
Yeah, that would
So
be
yeah,
incredible. Yeah, because that hour would set the tone for the week. Like I just
yeah,
feel, I would love to do that, like be a part of that group. I really like that idea. And I mean, if you
yeah,
do want to talk to each other, that's fine, I'm sure. But most people are there to concentrate on their own thing. It's just like these writing retreats. I've been invited to go,
mhm,
and I am hoping that I can go one day. And
yeah,
it sounds like just everybody's in the same zone, and but one person could be working on one thing and one person works on something completely different. It doesn't have to
yeah,
be the same creative energy, like,
yeah,
yeah, but
yeah.
the energy's there.
It always reminds me of like young children when they're engaged in parallel play. Like they're just beside each other, each doing separate things, but they want to be together.
Yeah.
And it's very similar. And yeah, I just and it's nice to know that there's other people out there doing, because I think sometimes we feel, depending where we are, like I don't necessarily have a circle of uh, creative friends where I am, where we would get together and do something like that. Or, it's a very small circle that I might talk to them about my creative pursuits. I think a
That'll
lot of
change
people
though.
I know,
That's going to change
yeah,
because
well,
everybody's
it's,
creative.
yes,
They need to zone into that. You need to introduce people to more, like, in your community. Say that's perfect place to start, because you need to, yeah, yeah, like get people in your area for sure.
but, but sometimes the people in our life don't understand it.
I get it.
They don't understand, and it could be a spouse, it could just be the friends. So it's kind of nice to have that, knowing that there's other people out there
Yes.
that want to do the same thing, and it's like it's that important to them to just do something creative.
It's like two
So
groups almost, right? One where you want to
yeah,
introduce them to, hey, you need to, and then there's the group that's already there and they want to nurture that, and they don't
yeah,
necessarily have the connections. I love that so much. I'm already thinking, would I do some painting, or would I do my stained glass would be too loud, or would I, this would go right,
uh,
poetry. Like, what are some of the things that people don't normally associate with being creative? Like, I know there's the usual, the writing, the drawing, the music. What other, like you mentioned,
yeah,
cooking, like that's not something I normally would associate with being
yeah.
creative.
I think organization can be creative.
Oh,
um I'm going to say building a business is very creative. There's
yes.
a lot of creativity involved in that. Um, it could be something academic that you're working on.
Hmm.
That could be creative, whether you're writing a dissertation, or you're just doing some sort of reading or research. Researching is creative. Um,
How
just
is
anything that's
researching? I'm trying
pushing
to,
you forward.
yeah, yeah, that's true. I'm trying to associate the research part.
I think that, I mean, research is very individual, right? You kind of get pulled down different rabbit holes. You decide where you're going to go with it. I think it can help you form ideas depending on what you see. So it's just something where uh, you could spend time, but it's going to help you focus on your vision.
Hmm.
That's how I see it being creative.
I love that. And just opening your
Yeah.
mind and
Yeah.
yeah, like
Yeah.
even I know a few people who love doing makeup artistry. Like that's
Hmm.
the typical creative, but I think it's so amazing, you know? And
Yeah.
like I would look
Yeah.
like a clown, but
Nah,
you know,
I,
I'm not very good at that, but that's okay. But it would be fun. You know,
yeah.
it could be
Yeah.
anything. Um, and if you do, if you are good at your craft, teach other people,
Hmm.
like build the community. Like you don't have to, I don't know, just be open to sharing that because you know how good it makes you feel. We want to, it's therapy, honestly. Like music for me
Yeah.
is therapy. Like I've been to
Yeah.
therapy and music is better for me than there, like everything in its
Yeah.
place, and I can let go. I can be happy. I can
Hmm.
be angry. I can, whatever it allows me that space to feel whatever I want to feel. And usually when I start something creative and I finish, I feel completely different. Like there's a transformation.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah. It's like exercise.
hmm,
Sometimes it reminds me of that. Like, sometimes oftentimes I don't want to go. I don't want to do it. I don't feel like it, but I make myself go. And when I'm done, I'm always so happy that I did it. And I find my creativity is the same way. Sometimes I might kick and scream and be like, I don't feel like doing this today, or I've got a million excuses why I shouldn't. But if I sit down and even do 5 minutes, I just feel a sense of accomplishment and I feel so much better. And yeah, I never regret doing it. You never have that regret, right? You're always like, I'm so glad I sat down and did this. I'm so glad I did it. So
love it. And I'm just thinking, sometimes with I find that when my child was younger, I would take more trips to like the forest or, let's go look for bugs and let's go do these types of things. I think we have to remember that as adults, our life isn't just about responsibility. If we can get
mhm,
back to how we felt as kids and,
yeah.
take a trip to the local anything, no matter where you live, just come up with, and if you're really stuck and you don't know what to do, well, Google it. Google ideas for being, things will come up that I'm sure I have never thought of before, but you're like,
Yeah.
wow, this is so different, wood carving, like anything, fencing, like,
Yeah.
and just step outside of your comfort zone, go past your city boundaries or your town boundaries. And you'll see that I just find with travel, it's more accelerated
Mhm.
because our mindset going into the travel is more like relaxed. Like you said, we kind of take away, that the toilet needs to be cleaned or I have to
Mhm.
feed my numerous people in my household, or, it's just like, this is for me too. It's not just,
Yeah.
a lot of times as moms too, and as women, we try to just do everything for everybody else. And on a vacation, it's expected that everybody's on an equal level and we're all here
Yeah.
to enjoy it the same way. And I think the other
Mhm.
family members too, they accept that. They don't expect you necessarily as a mom or whatever to do those things. So that helps. I think I
Yeah.
told you once I was on strike. I put my a strike sign out in the
Yep.
driveway
Uh-huh.
because sometimes people don't allow us that space. We have to give permission to ourselves. And
Mhm.
the more we do it, the more we're going to find how necessary it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like when you were saying about how, if you're feeling really stressed out or whatever, and you forget that you need that creativity, that's when we need it the most.
Yeah.
And we forget.
Mm.
It's so easy to forget. So yeah, we've got to make that time for ourselves.
So after this interview, I've got a busy day ahead of me. But I'm going to promise that right after we end this interview, I'm going to take an hour. If I can spare more, I'll take more. But for now, I'm going to take an hour and I'm going to do something creative. My problem is deciding which one because I have so many things that I enjoy, you know, but I'm going to
Yeah.
promise that to myself and I'm going to try. See, for me, I'll do like 8 hours in one day of like stained glass, and then I won't do
Mhm.
anything for months. And then another day, I'll try to find a burst of time. But I think it's so much more effective when you can find a little bit of time every day or every other day because it starts to build that habit. So I promise you, I will do that today after our interview. What creative thing are
Beautiful.
you going to do today?
Let me see. What am I going to do today? I actually, this is borderline creative, but I'm packing up to go away for a couple days without my family,
Travel.
on
Yay.
a little mini retreat for 2 days, someplace without any Wi-Fi.
Oh,
Um, so I have to decide what I'm going to bring. So that's going to be a little bit creative. I have to do some gardening today. I'm
very.
excited about that. I find that very creative. Yeah. And I have to do a bit of writing.
Oh,
So,
good for
yeah.
you. And
Yeah.
good for you for taking those couple of days. I mean, so there's nothing more rejuvenating than, one one year we have Family Day here in Canada, right? And as you know, and one year for Family Day, my husband says, "Okay, I'm taking the family and we're leaving you alone." I'm like, "Wow, it's Family Day and I get." And it was like the coolest thing ever. And people are like,
Yeah.
"Don't you like spending time with your family?" And I'm like, "Yes, but what a gift." Like I
Yes.
get like it's amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Spend time with your family every day. You got to take a little bit of time for yourself sometimes. It's okay to do that. Yeah.
tell us a little bit about your Facebook group, if you don't mind, your creative Facebook group.
Sure. So I have a new Facebook group that I've started called the Creativity Collab. And it's just a space for people to come um, talk about creativity and share their work, um, talk to meet other artists and other creatives. It's for absolutely anyone, no matter what your creative endeavor is. It's for all skill levels, and it's meant to be just a really supportive space where people can share. Because again, I think sometimes we don't always have people in our life that understand this. And it's just nice to have a space to be able to go talk about this kind of stuff and talk about, if you're having creative struggles and look for advice on how to work through them. So yeah, people share their work. We talk about our creative wins that we had for the week. Creative wins too can be resting. Um, yeah, so it's been fun so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's called the Creative Collab.
Creativity Collab.
Creativity Collab. Sorry, thank
Yeah.
you. That's awesome. Where else can we find you if we want to, like just
Uh, sure. Online, I'm at GinaClarkCreative.com. And I'm also on Instagram at Gina Clark Creative. And if you go on my website, I have a free guide, 5 steps to unlocking your creativity. Um, so yeah, if you head to the website, you can get that for free. And it's just something, if you're struggling to be more creative, it's a great starting point uh, to get yourself moving.
I love that. We all need that starting point. I think there are
Yeah,
more of us that need it that don't. Um,
yeah,
because the ones that are already doing it don't need to be kind of convinced of the outcome. We don't need to be, kind of taught all the good things that come out of it. We already know, we can feel it. So I
yeah.
think I love that. I love that guide. Is there anything we didn't speak about today that you would like to talk about?
I don't think so. I think that was fabulous. It was so fun again.
Oh, that's great. I wish you the best next 2 days and enjoy your packing and enjoy all the moments to yourself and to reflect. And I think that's so healthy. And I'm so glad that you're taking time to do that. Thank you so
Thank you.
much for coming back and reminding us how travel can bring out the creativity. And it's so it's such a good reminder because we forget, even if we have to go somewhere for, and it's not really a vacation, you can still take time during that travel to observe and to take it all in.
Yep, beautiful.
Thank you, Gina. I hope you enjoyed it. I always love having you back on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. If you enjoyed what you heard, please subscribe or leave a review. See you next week on the Giving Starts With You podcast.